a storm is once again gathering over one of the oldest and most powerful institutions in the world, the Catholic Church. For centuries, it has stood as a symbol of faith, charity, and hope for millions. But behind the sacred walls and quiet cathedrals, history has shown that moments of deep crisis can emerge, testing the faith of both believers and leaders. Now, as reports of a new investigation begin to circulate, many fear that the Church could soon face one of its darkest chapters once again. 2 decades ago, the world watched in shock as the Catholic Church was shaken by revelations of abuse and systemic cover-ups. The scandal that broke out in Boston in the early 2000s exposed a painful truth, one that had been hidden behind years of silence. It was a story that changed not only the image of the Church, but also the way society viewed authority, morality, and trust. Today, whispers of a new dossier, a new report, and new names threaten to reopen wounds that were never fully healed. According to early reports, this upcoming investigation may focus on decades of mishandled cases within a diocese in New England. The very mention of this has already caused unease among the faithful and concern within the hierarchy. It feels like history may be repeating itself, and for many, the pain is still too raw to face again. Had stood for generations. Back then, few imagined that such a massive crisis could ever return. The Church vowed transparency, pledged reforms, and promised to never repeat the mistakes of the past. And yet, as time went on, suspicion lingered. Critics said that silence and denial still existed under different forms, quieter, more careful, but still present. And now, with a new investigation on the horizon, that old fear is resurfacing. This time, attention turns toward Rhode Island, where rumors of a lengthy, detailed report have already begun to circulate among journalists and church observers. It is said to cover events dating back to the 1950s, more than 70 years of documents, complaints, and correspondence. The idea that the report could be made public has already created waves inside and outside the Church. For believers, it raises difficult questions. Has enough truly changed? Have the lessons from Boston been learned? Or have the same mistakes quietly continued under new faces and new policies? In the past, the Church's greatest struggle was not only with the crimes themselves, but with the silence that surrounded them. Many faithful Catholics have spoken about this as a spiritual wound, a kind of betrayal that feels deeper than any ordinary wrongdoing. When people place their faith in a sacred institution, they are not just trusting in people, they are trusting in something divine. When that trust is broken, it leaves a scar that can last for generations. The situation today feels heavy with that same sense of unease. Some within the Church fear that if this new dossier truly exposes years of hidden misconduct, the impact could rival or even surpass the crisis of the early 2000s. Others, however, believe that the Church is now stronger, more aware, and better prepared to face painful truths head-on. In recent years, new guidelines and oversight mechanisms have been introduced to prevent cover-ups and to ensure justice for victims. Yet no system can erase the past, and when new evidence surfaces, old memories return. What makes this moment even more complex is the role of the media. 2 decades ago, it was investigative journalism that broke the silence. The reports by journalists forced the Church to confront what it had long avoided. And now, once again, journalists are said to be working on releasing the details of this new report. It's a reminder that the balance between truth and reputation is a fragile one, and that when it comes to institutions as large and as spiritual as the Church, the consequences of exposure can shake entire communities. Behind every headline, there are human lives. There are the victims who still carry the pain of the past, and the priests who remained faithful to their vows, serving quietly while others' actions cast shadows over them. There are families who still attend Mass every week, torn between faith in God and disappointment in men. And there are leaders who must now decide whether to defend the Church's image or confront its flaws openly. It is not an easy choice, and the weight of that choice is enormous. Throughout history, the Catholic Church has faced trials, from persecution and wars to internal corruption and loss of moral authority. Yet somehow, it has survived. Every crisis, no matter how great, has become a test of faith and renewal. Some believe that this new scandal, if confirmed, could be another such test, not just for the Church as an institution, but for every believer who must choose between despair and hope. As rumors grow louder, attention also turns to the past figures who once called for reform. Among them was Archbishop Carlo Maria Vinego, whose open letter years ago sent shockwaves through the Vatican and beyond. His words divided opinion. For some, he was a truth-teller. For others, a rebel. But what no one could deny was the power of his message, a demand for honesty, accountability, and spiritual renewal. That same call for truth is being echoed again now, as many wonder whether the Church has truly faced its own reflection. In every generation, the Church has stood between two worlds, the sacred and the human. It preaches eternal values, yet it is managed by imperfect people. That contradiction is what makes every institution diverse and complex. Scandal so devastating because it reminds the world that even those who wear holy garments can fail. And it is in those failures that the greatest tests of faith arise. As the investigation in Rhode Island prepares to conclude, the faithful wait in silence. Some pray for truth, others for mercy, and many for both. The report, said to exceed 400 pages, could reveal decades of hidden pain. Whether its publication will bring healing or more division remains to be seen. But one thing is clear. The Church is once again at a crossroads, and the choices made now will echo far into the future. The air around the Church feels heavy again. Across parishes, seminaries, and quiet towns, there is a sense of waiting, a silence before the storm. Some priests continue their daily prayers and services as if nothing has changed, but inside, many feel a familiar fear returning. They have seen this before. They know what happens when the past catches up with the present. Every time a scandal breaks, the pain is not only felt by the victims or the guilty, but by the millions of innocent believers who simply want to hold on to their faith. In many communities, the Church is more than a place of worship. It is a family. It baptizes children, blesses marriages, and comforts the dying. It holds memories, traditions, and moments that define lives. When news of wrongdoing comes from such a sacred place, the effect is like an earthquake. It shakes everything: the beliefs, the trust, the connection between heaven and earth. That is what makes the new investigation so troubling. Early information suggests that this report has been years in the making. It has gathered testimonies, letters, and official files stretching back over decades. Some say it may reveal not only individual acts of abuse, but patterns of silence and mismanagement. For those who remember the Boston revelations, this sounds all too familiar. Back then, the shock was not just about what had happened, but about how it was allowed to happen again and again. When the first crisis erupted in 2002, the Catholic Church promised reform. Bishops across the United States signed charters to protect minors, introduced review boards, and created policies for reporting abuse. At the time, these measures were seen as a new beginning, a way to make sure that nothing like that could ever happen again. Yet 2 decades later, questions remain. Were those promises kept? Were the changes deep enough to reach the heart of the problem? As journalists now prepare to release another set of findings, the Church faces a painful truth. Even one uncovered case can reignite all the anger and mistrust that once filled the air. The past never truly goes away. It lingers in memories, in documents, in the quiet corners of the soul. And when it resurfaces, it demands to be heard. Among the faithful, reactions are mixed. Some defend the Church, arguing that it has already paid a heavy price, that countless good priests have been shamed for the sins of a few. Others, however, say that the only way to restore honor is through full honesty, no matter how much it hurts. Between these two sides lies the great struggle, the same one that has haunted Christianity for centuries, the battle between mercy and justice. Every time an institution faces exposure, the question of forgiveness arises. Can forgiveness exist without truth? Can there be healing without full confession? The gospel teaches that light must expose darkness. Yet for decades, darkness was allowed to grow unchecked. Many Catholics today are asking not whether they can forgive, but whether they can still believe. In the 2010s, when Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano published his open letter accusing high-ranking officials of ignoring the misconduct of former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, the Church once again found itself at the center of a storm. The accusations were shocking not only because of their content, but because of their source. Vigano was not an outsider. He was part of the Vatican's diplomatic circle, a man who had seen the inner workings of the system. His decision to speak publicly broke centuries of tradition. It tore open a wound that had never fully closed. His letter painted a picture of power and silence, a world where certain figures, despite their misconduct, were protected by a network of influence. For some, Vigano's words were a revelation. For others, they were a scandal in themselves, an attack on the unity of the Church. Yet, regardless of opinion, his actions forced a difficult conversation. The faithful began asking who was truly responsible for protecting the innocent, and whether the system itself had lost its way. Years later, the McCarrick case became a symbol of everything that had gone wrong. How influence and connections could overshadow truth. How ambition could blind even holy men. And how the Church's moral authority could be shaken from within. McCarrick's downfall and eventual laicization sent a message that no rank was untouchable. But it also left behind a deeper question. If one man could rise so high while hiding so much, how many others had been overlooked? Now, as Rhode Island prepares for its moment of reckoning, those old fears have returned. The possibility that documents may reveal new cover-ups is reopening debates that were never settled. Once again, the faithful are caught between anger and sorrow, between loyalty to their faith and disappointment in their leaders. In the midst of this turmoil, one truth stands out. Faith itself is not guilty. The actions of individuals, no matter how terrible, cannot erase the message of compassion and love that Christianity teaches. And yet, people are human. When leaders fail, when trust is broken, faith can tremble. For many Catholics, these moments feel like a test. Do they continue to believe despite the failures of men? Or do they turn away, disillusioned and bitter? Some stay because they believe that faith belongs to God, not to the errors of humans. Others leave, saying they can no longer support an institution that allowed so much harm. This internal struggle